Hey everyone, this is Rob Stanley with Feedback Wiz, and today I have Clint Hedin. He is an Amazon influencer and an 8-figure Amazon seller. Clint, welcome to the E-commerce Wiz podcast. Thanks for being on.
Great, thanks so much for having me.
So Clint, today we're gonna let's cover logistics when it comes to Amazon, and I'm gonna hit you right off the back with a scenario. So a lot of people, they go through using all these tools and they're doing all their research and they spend hours to find that perfect product. And once they found that perfect product, they get that sample in, the samples look good, and they go back to the factory, they order, let's say like 1,000 of this, garlic press. And, I think people don't understand like what the process is after they decide they're ordering that 1,000, and paid for it. Obviously you guys still pay for it. So maybe step us through, what is the next step after I've ordered that 1,000 garlic presses? Where do I go from there?
Sure, great question. And I've bumped my head enough times to kind of learn what not to do and what to do. I incorporate, as part of the whole logistics package and moving the goods from the factory in China into the US, I use a document I call a product specification sheet. And that's to me has become critical. It's an absolute must-have. It can be a Word document. I'll save it as a PDF file, and that lists out everything that garlic press is, how it's supposed to look, what it's supposed to weigh, its dimensions. Is it tin? Is it aluminum? Is it steel? All of this information, right? Including the logistics information, things like no carton can weigh more than 50 pounds, or maybe that's 22.5 kilograms or whatever it is. No one side of any master carton can be, it can be longer than 25 inches. These are Amazon requirements, right? So inside of my product specification sheet, you can go to Visit Seller Central and see how does Amazon want to receive the goods, and make sure you're communicating that to your supplier. They don't want packing peanuts, right? The ownership is on us for being very clear with our Chinese partners, or wherever this is coming from, how the goods need to be prepped and packed. You don't want surprises at an Amazon loading dock. This stuff needs to be worked out way in advance before it goes on a pallet and in a container and then begins to cross the ocean. So it starts there at the factory when you're placing the order. You're setting yourself up for success there. So that product specification sheet, again, it's gonna list out here's how you can pack, here's how you cannot pack. And you don't want to be opening a container to repackage items when they get here. So you're gonna set that up from the very beginning.
Yeah. So just so I'm clear, so that's something you probably want to do like prior to paying them, like where you're still like, hey, I'm going to order 1,000 of these, but by the way, here's the specs on what I need for the packaging.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of that during the negotiation process, because you want to be clear with, here's how I need the team to pack this for me. Try not to make changes later. And just like if you have a contract to do a remodel on your house, if you start making changes later, things start to get more expensive. So live in Seller Central, live in Amazon's documentation. Amazon is very clear with how they want goods. Get off of Facebook. Ignore what your friends say, ignore what Facebook groups say, because frankly that doesn't matter. No one at an Amazon loading dock is gonna reference a Facebook group and say, oh, but some stranger told me this was okay. Ownership is on you. This is your business to understand what the TOS says, the way Amazon wants to receive goods. You got to know this yourself, right?
Yeah.
There's no substitute for running your own business and using your own eyes of how this is supposed to be packaged. So yeah, you're right. It goes back to I'm going to use that specification sheet even during placing the order, right? So that everybody knows that you can't be more than 50 pounds, can't be more than 25 inches on any one side, right? Things like drop tests. I don't want to see any packing peanuts. I don't want to see any shredded newspaper in the master cartons themselves. Again, there's a whole list that Amazon provides that you can take a look through. Heck, do what I did, even cut and paste it. You just simply copy it from how Amazon wants their packaging, paste it into your product specifications. Here's what you can and cannot do when you're packing my goods. That way you get yourself out of trouble. Yeah, no,
that's actually great tips right there. Anybody who's getting started, as you're kind of, let's say ordering samples, you should already be looking at Seller Central for these requirements and have this prepped ahead of time before you've placed that order for 1,000 or before you sent that money. It sounds like this is like almost pre-prep work, right? Like you got to prep what you're going to be doing ahead of time, even though maybe you haven't actually decided on a product, whether it's a little bigger or smaller. You still are going to have sort of this hit list of, here's the things I need to make sure I get clear to them packaging wise once I do commit to ordering these 1,000. And then, so you did touch a little bit on like the drop test. Well, actually, let me back up. So let's talk a little more about package sizing, right? Package sizing can really kind of make or break your margins if you're going to have it at FBA, right? So you don't want it too tight on there. You don't want it too large, but you need to be able to pass a drop test. So why don't you maybe go into that a little bit about how important is packaging and making sure you get the right sizing, not only for the drop test, but also for taking up space in the FBA warehouse.
Sure. Yeah, we are focusing on FBA and not necessarily merchant fulfilled, because FBA fees, they really ratchet up as soon as you begin to get into oversized. And, that can be a difference of a quarter of an inch, a 1 inch, pushes you up into that oversized tier. And now, you had all your profit and loss worked out. You kind of had your pro formas. You're feeling good about this, only to later get a surprise of, oops, whoops, maybe I could have squeezed my length down by 2 inches, and then the height could have been a little bit taller, right? Really understanding that from the get-go. And there's some things you can kind of figure out on the fly. You can figure this out on the fly. It's very expensive to do so. You're doing yourself a much more larger service by, again, go back to FBA requirements, and you're familiarizing yourself with specifically, here's what is standard sized here, small, medium, large, and then what is going to push you up into that oversized. But not only do your fulfillment fees just start to ratchet up, your ability to send into maybe just one warehouse, or Amazon is going to be a lot more fickle with where they want your oversized inventory to go. And it ends up, I'm simply saying this, understand what you're getting yourself into. Selling oversized stuff is great because most people don't want to mess with it because of the costs involved. Most people, they hear what everybody else says. It's keep it in a shoebox, price between $15 and $40, right? Only a couple of pounds. That's what everybody does. And there's money to be made there, but that's not to say that you can't make money in oversized. You absolutely can. And it's a great opportunity because most people ignore it because they're afraid of it. It's not necessarily be afraid of it. It's just you're doing your research ahead of time, and you're understanding what you're obligating yourself to when it comes to fulfillment fees on the backside. So if you're doing it, it's part of a strategic move. It's not a surprise charge you get hit with later.
Yeah. To bring up 2 points, 2 things you brought up though. When we're talking about like a master carton, and we're talking about getting maybe that extra 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch size down to still be able to pass like a drop test. So Clint's talking about, if you're ordering thousands or even more of something, you're talking about the possibility of one less master carton you have to ship. By getting that size down, they might be able to fit an extra, let's say 2 or 4 into one of the master cartons, which down the road, depending on how many master cartons there are, that could equal one less master carton, which is money in your pocket because now it's one less big giant box that has to ship. So that's what he's talking about when you're talking about getting that little bit of extra space out of that package to be able to, that down the road, that's equals a lot more money. So that's a great point you brought up, because people don't realize that that's just money in your pocket right there that you're giving away. So, and then oversize, speaking of oversize, you're right. A lot of people avoid the oversize because they're just afraid of it. But to be honest, I mean, sometimes oversize has good margin. I mean, I know from my experience, when we sold oversized items, we were definitely not scared to send those over to Amazon. And man, we made some good money on those oversized items. Our margins were a lot better on them because people shied away from them, meant less people selling in that space. So have you seen something like that, Clint, also?
Sure, it's just like anything else. The more barriers there are, there's the more opportunities, right? The more difficult it is, the more regulations you have to follow, the more homework you have to do, the more money on the other side, right? It's true of this business and absolutely any, right? And that's why the 1% will always be the 1%, and those that fail will be those that fail. There's some people that are willing to put in the work and say, I get it. I know this is going to be tough, and I'm going to learn it. I'm going to do what's necessary to make myself successful. Anyways, not necessarily just choose the easy route. Not to say the easy route here being standard size, but there's still a ton of money to be made in oversized. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not that I would necessarily say if this is your first shipment, start out there. But if you're doing your homework and you happen to see something that falls into that oversized tier, maybe don't immediately kill it, right? Just make yourself aware of, I'm going to have a little few more things to learn, but it's not an immediate discard the idea. If anything, it would be the opposite, right? Because there's less competitors.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's another question. Speaking of like factories and Amazon and having them, basically getting it from the factory to Amazon. So one of the things I remember when we were sourcing items from our factory and getting it to Amazon is we were kind of like, okay, do we have the truck come to the factory and pick it up? Or do we send it to like a consolidation place and have it consolidated, then taken over to Amazon? And the point was that we didn't want Amazon to know our factory or where it was coming from. So have you ever seen or dealt with an issue like that, or had that same sort of like gut feeling like, ooh, I don't know if I want Amazon to know where I'm sourcing this at?
Sure. Amazon has enough data points at this, right, that there's not a whole lot any of us can hide from Amazon, right? I mean, but with their, even, AWS, they're, right, like so many large companies run on Amazon servers. Okay, it is what it is. Like it seems like every other week there's a new story about Facebook is sharing data with Amazon and Amazon is sharing, right? It's all out there. I feel like on the list of things I should be concerned with, that's not one of them. I mean, I'm not to say that Amazon doesn't come in and knock us off. Absolutely. Right. And they've got all the data points to do it. They know what they know what it costs. They know our UPS inbound shipping. They know our LTL inbound shipping. And they've got enough smart buyers, right? There's the Amazon Dragon Boat program for moving goods from China. They know, right? The reality is they know. Unless there was some unique IP patents involved, something like that. Maybe that's a little bit of a different story, right? You're Apple and you're coming out with the next generation iPhone and you want to keep it all under wraps. Maybe that's a little bit different story. I would say that's not a world that I operate in. I don't think that applies to a whole lot of people, unless you got something super secretive and you really want this locked down. If that's the case, maybe you're not manufacturing in China anyways, because right, we know how they tend to view IP laws.
Yeah. It's just one of those things that usually newer sellers are going to experience, right? They're going to go through that little scare of, oh, wow, I'm telling Amazon where I'm doing, where I'm getting this. And Clint's basically saying they already know. And they do.
Yeah. No, that being said, we can delve a little bit more into that inbound logistics process, because sure. I have never told Amazon my factory address. The ship from address is always either consolidator or an address here in the U.S., which once the container clears customs, that's the ship from address as far as Amazon is concerned. Now, again, of course, anything coming in via the water, it's a matter of public record, and you can do enough digging. And again, Amazon, they've got smart folks. If they want to comb through and pull up my LLC information, they have our EIN numbers, right? That's not a secret. Every LLC has an EIN number, that employer identification number, basically the social security numbers. They've got that data on us because it's hooked to our Seller Central account. And if they know that, and import records, that's a matter of public record. It's just a matter of them doing enough digging. They know where the factory is, right? So there's things to be worried about. Be worried about it, but don't let it stop you, right? Maybe just have that in the back of your mind. I'm still going to move.
Yeah. How many? So let's talk a little more about the factory. So how many times have you experienced or heard stories about? I'm getting it from this factory, this great, garlic press, and then I find out later they're selling a different version of that garlic press on Amazon directly. Through the factory is selling it right on Amazon directly. So now I'm almost competing against them, because I remember going over there and going, let's say, to like Canton Fair, and we would literally ask straight up, just, hey, how many of these products and which one are you selling on Amazon right now, and which ones can we sell? Because we knew they were already selling them on there. I mean, you could almost do a search while you were sitting in the booth and see which factories are doing it. And quite a few of them do it, probably even more now than in the last, let's say, 3 years. Probably 3 years ago, it was a lot less. But have you experienced something like that where you've seen the factory might have either a specific item they're already selling on Amazon, so they'll sell you, instead of X, they'll sell you Y, or we even saw cases where they had somebody already that locked in a particular design, and then you could sell this design instead. Have you seen things like that? That's something that people might experience as they get into selling on Amazon a little more.
Yeah, that definitely happens. And knock on wood, I haven't seen it directly happen. At least I haven't detected it. So it could have happened, and they ended up being pretty shitty sellers, and then they never made it to page one. That's a possibility. You'll definitely, if it's you have a great company that your manufacturing partner. The reality is other people men and women like me out there looking for the same thing, and so it is what it is. That's part of the game we play. That's part of this seismic shift between the old retail malls and we are basically killing the Sears and the Fred Meyers of the world, if you will. That's part of that. That's part of it, right? It used to be the Sears bought from these guys, and that's it. Now we are. Right, and just like that, there's going to be other men and women like me that are buying from them also. That's just part of. If you want stability, this is probably not the right industry.
Yeah,
right. That's a different. That's if you're looking for like I want everything to stay the same and I want to have one supplier and I never want to have problems. This is probably not a good fit. It's just the reality of what we're doing, right? Because this opportunity didn't even exist in its same current form, even a matter of a couple of years ago. In a couple of years from now, it'll look different again, right? That's why we make the money, because we're willing to be flexible and move fast.
Yeah. When you're first starting out, if you're not willing to work 10 to 12-hour days, almost 7 days a week, you probably need to go get a 9-to-5 job, because when you're first starting out, you're going to put in a lot of hours. I mean, I'm sure people hear online about, oh yeah, I worked 4 hours today and made X amount of money. That's great. That person's probably been doing it for quite a while and gets it and can do it within 4 hours. And they've already established products and things like that, but not to get off the subject. Anyways, so let's see, we sourced our product. We have got the packaging down to the right sizing. We have master cartons. Now, where in the process, so people understand, do you have somebody do a quality check, a drop check, and what's involved in getting that? Do you have the factory do it, hire an outside service? Maybe touch on that so people understand that process.
Yeah, such a critical component that I shied away from in the beginning. I think a lot of people do, it's like maybe we don't want to second guess our factory. Some trepidation, we haven't done it before, and so it's something new we're kind of uncomfortable with. In the beginning, I didn't know what I didn't know. There weren't courses out there to take that to give you this advice. The reality is, if you're going to do this, spend the money and get an inspection. Period. End of sentence. Just do it. Just like, don't question yourself. Don't like hem-haw around it. Spend the money, get an inspection. Now imagine, hey Clint, I've been working with this factory and I've never done an inspection before. Will that be off-putting to them? Will that look like I don't trust them any longer? No, absolutely not. Again, let's go back to the old brick and mortar retail example. These companies, the large retailers, there's infrastructure that's been set up way before we came on the scene, right? There's quality inspection companies. There's an entire infrastructure around going out, taking pictures and documenting and doing quality checks that existed long before I started selling, and most anybody here started selling. Factories are very used to it. Any large retailer absolutely does it. That's almost a taken for granted thing. We are the anomalies because we're the new guys. We don't know any better, right? Factories are absolutely used to having quality inspections done. So on their end, it's not off-putting. It's not a matter of like they don't trust me anymore. Frankly, we are the strange ones because we don't do it, and a lot of new sellers don't do it because they don't know they should. They haven't got burned yet, or maybe they think there's some sort of social faux pas there. Well, get over that. There's not. But because again, going back to my Sears example, I assure you that anything they're manufacturing private label, they are having inspections done, and we should be doing the same. So my inspection process goes. We've got the specification sheet, so we've talked about this is what the garlic press weighs. Here's the anodizing on the outside. Here's how it's to be packaged. In my specification sheet, near the end, there's a paragraph that says something along the lines of, when production is 100% completed and 80% packed in master cartons, you're to notify me, and we will have an independent inspector come in. So that sets the stage from the beginning. They know that an inspector is coming. So you go ahead. You've probably paid the deposit. They notify you. Hey, we're done with production. We're packing now. Go ahead and set it up. There's a Google China inspection, right? You're going to come up with a ton of companies. Frankly, I've only worked with one. I don't get anything from it, but the name of the company is China Quality Check, ChinaQualityCheck.com. Again, check them out. Look at their website. V Trust is another really big one.
Hold on, is that B with a boy or V as in Victor?
V as in Victor.
V as in Victor, trust.com?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. I've not worked with them. No reason why. I just know that that's another pretty big company out there. Again, a brief Google search, you'll come up with inspection companies. What this is going to cost you, it'll be the more developed companies that offer this service. You'll be able to almost look at a menu, right? And it'll be what do you want tested? I opt for what is generally referred to as a pre-shipment inspection. So they can do any sort of test you want. I've never sold clothing items, but if you want a flame retardant test, here's the price for a flame retardant test, right? All sorts of things. Again, I do what's called a pre-inspection. I don't believe I've ever paid. You plan on $100 to $200. Depending on how long this video's up, maybe that changes. When you're booking more of these, you'll develop a relationship, and your pricing will probably get a little more favorable. But again, for that price point, the peace of mind, that before I wire that final payment, again, because that's can be a little off-putting in the beginning. Like, I'm wiring how much money, thousands of dollars, to a stranger in China I've never met. Spend the $100 to $200, whatever it is. Get that pre-shipment inspection done. You'll sleep better at night. Your blood pressure will be lower. And that when you clear customs and you're here in the United States, you already know what you're going to get. It's an absolute necessity as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and to touch on what Clint just said, just so you're aware, he's talking about each time you order. This isn't I ordered from this factory. The first time I had an inspection done, the quality passed 100%. I'm good. I'm not going to do an inspection again, because it only takes one time. Now, personal experience. We had a company we ordered. It was a plastic item. And sure enough, we found out later that what happened was the first initial batch, they were using brand new plastic pellets. And then to save costs, they switched later to recycled plastic pellets to inject the molding, which actually made the plastic a little bit more brittle and didn't last as long. And we messed up by thinking, hey, we have done tens of thousands of these items through this factory. We're good. We don't need to do an inspection. And sure enough, that one time you don't is when you get caught and you end up with a bunch of returns, a bunch of issues. And that now starts messing up your sales velocity, messes up your ratings. It hurts your product and your brand. So, Clint's talking about each time you order, spend that couple $100 extra, just factor it into the price, factor it into the price before you do it. So that's a great tip there, Clint, for sure, on making sure that each time you're double checking that. So once we get that done and we've had the independent, the other thing is, don't let the factory say they have an inspector or they'll do it for you or include it in the price.
No,
because you're just looking for more issues doing that too. So I meant to mention that while you were going there. So what's next then, Clint? Once I've done that, what's the next step I do to get this over? Where do we go from here?
Sure. So you got your inspection report. You flip through it. It'll be possibly 20, 30-page PDF, incredibly detailed. They are going to find defects. So mentally, emotionally, prepare yourself for I'm going to get this document that's going to show a whole bunch of stuff wrong, because you are paying them to find these things, right? And they want to be a great service provider. They want you to come back to them, so they are going to find defects. That's just the reality. It's on us to decide what we're comfortable with, right? You'll end up, the company I work with, it can be like a size of a hair scratch on something, and they're going to call that out as a defect. Again, we're paying them for a service, and they want to prove their worth, right? So they're going to find all sorts of things. Hopefully, we come back. There's nothing that's really major, right? Anything they pick up, you'll have a conversation with the factory. We noticed this. We need you to fix resolve whatever these issues may be. Knock on wood. After I started doing that, again, every shipment, every time, I haven't ever had a problem since then. So I guess the question of, well, what do you do when you get a horrible inspection report back? Well, I haven't had it. I'm sure there's doomsday scenario out there where you just end up butting heads with the manufacturer. But by setting that precedent up front, you're going to have an inspection, and then I'm not paying you the 70% until we're cleared. I haven't had an issue, right? Because both of us have an interest in making sure our customers get a quality product. So skip forward. We've cleared that. We're good. We know there's some defects on there, but we're happy with it. We're going to go
Actually,
ahead.
Clint, hold on. Let's stop. Yeah. Let's stop for 1 second, because let's make sure people understand. Like, there could be some factories out there that, let's say they are testing the waters to see if you're a first-time buyer, and they might ask for a big chunk of money up front from you.
Sure.
So let's talk a smidge about, I don't want to call it the norm, but the sort of standard of how much you should be giving them pre-production. I've seen it where it goes pre-production, halfway through production, then after final inspection type thing. Maybe touch on that a little before we kind of jump to going from the next point on.
Sure. And actually, yeah, that's fairly critical, as that links into Incoterms. So generally you'll start out with 30% down, meaning you're going to send them 30% deposit. So $100,000 order, you're sending some stranger 30 grand, and then 70% when they wrap up and when they're done. So that's you're paying them. They've got enough money to get the gears turning to procure the raw materials, right? But then I'm not paying the 70% until we're 100% done with production. Then I'm going to go ahead and pay it off at that point. Depending on the factory, on your relationship, you can definitely negotiate more favorable terms. That's about the standard. That's probably where you're going to start, right? Is the 30-70 split. 50-50, I've not heard of 50-50. Maybe that's a little bit less favorable to us, the buyer, more favorable to the supplier. But the 30-70 split is, so when they ask for that, it's not uncommon. That's pretty much the general.
Yeah. I've seen some 60-40s, but yeah, you're right. 70-30 is 30-70, whatever which way you want to put it. You're giving them 30 up front and then 70 at the end, basically. So, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure people understand that, because that is something that people are going to experience. And I have dealt with factories where they were, trying to ask us for like 80% up front, and we're like, whoa, no way. I mean, yeah. And it was like, first of all, it was a red alert that why are they asking for so much? Because the standard is around that 30-40% up front. I've seen as low as 20. So it kind of red alert us right there on like, ooh, are they trying to pull something? Is the quality issue? So that was kind of a first indication, like, maybe we don't want to work with these people, but maybe we'll give them a little chance, or we'll scale the order down, or hey, maybe we better order 10 or 20 and check these first, and we'll pay for the sample. So, we'd already gotten the samples, but maybe we need some more just to get a little better, kind of piece of the pie to see what they're doing. So yeah, that was one thing we ran into. You're going to run into all kinds of scenarios, is what Clint and I are saying, that you're going to see all kinds of things, but these are the standards that we've seen from many years of experience. So go ahead, Clint. So the next process after you've got that inspection, we're getting the paperwork together. Where do we go from there?
Yeah, I mentioned Incoterms. So if you're starting this and you've never heard that word before, Google it. When I was brand new, there's an 8.5 by 11 sheet out there, Incoterms, so INCO terms, TERMS, all one word. That's basically, this is, you've heard the word FOB, free on board, right? DDP, deliver duty paid. These are all Incoterms. They're global. They're standard. Everybody understands them, right? It's a way to, it's kind of a common language for facilitating international commerce, right? Where FOB means the same thing no matter where you are in the world. DDP means the same thing no matter where you are in the world. So it's kind of a common language that everybody uses no matter where you're buying or where you're selling. Google it. I printed up a sheet and I tacked it on my wall until I basically had it memorized. There is no substitute for that. This is your business. You have to learn it. It is what it is. Go through it, learn it, read it, and familiarize yourself. It's a critical part of negotiation and logistics. At one end of the spectrum, there would be what usually it's, I think, deliver duty paid is the DDP. That's just what it sounds like. Is I'm going to pay $10 a unit for my garlic press, DDP. That means that I'm paying my supplier $10 per unit, and it's their job to deliver it to me duty paid, meaning it gets to my doorstep. I don't pay anything else. I don't pay any freight insurance. I don't pay any logistics company. I don't pay duty. They are responsible for that. And wrapped in that $10 is all of these other charges that they are responsible for taking care of on my behalf. So that means the garlic press might cost $10. It's expensive because there's all the other costs rolled into it. That's one end of the spectrum, DDP. The other end of the spectrum is called X work, or the EXW. X work is where the garlic press manufacturer makes the garlic press. They put it in cartons and they set it on their loading dock, and they call you up and say, hey, Clint, come and pick up your garlic press. You are responsible for everything. So that, again, all of the transportation charges, clearing foreign customs, clearing U.S. customs, right? Truck chassis rental, all the little parts and pieces that go into it. I am responsible for all of that. So basically, we get the two continuums, right? One end is they take care of everything. One end is I take care of everything. So as where delivered duty paid might be $10, the X work price might be $3, might be $2. And so it really goes back to you have to understand this when you begin negotiating, because what are you truly paying for, right? Where there's been so much talk about duty, about tariffs, right? That's a really big deal, right? Suddenly an extra 25%, extra 10% or something on the price you negotiated and you didn't know that was coming. You can't afford that in this business. That can be your margin, right? That can kill you, or make a profitable product unprofitable, or possibly even worse if you don't understand that. So that goes back to familiarize yourself with what Incoterms are, and then what is your pricing, right? If you are expecting I paid $10 and you're supposed to get it to my door, but your factory is saying, well, no, you paid $10. Now you have to come and pick it up. Those are two very, very different things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wow. That's actually deeper than I knew. Because I mean, with us, we were using Consolidator, and then we were taking it to our warehouse, and then from our warehouse, we were sending, because we were sold on a bunch of different marketplaces. So, but yeah, I didn't even realize it went that deep. That's really good information. So everything Clint just covered, you should go Google every one of those words. The DDP was it
FOB? Yeah.
Yeah, take a look at those and maybe have a good understanding of what those are, so you know, because I mean, having a good understanding of those sounds like it could save you money, right? I mean, that's what you're basically saying. Yeah. So which way, have you done both ways of that, Clint, or what, and maybe step us through that process of which way you did and kind of where it went, what happened next after that, like if a truck picked it up versus you having to have a truck pick it up at the warehouse, at the manufacturer in China.
Sure. Yeah. So there's probably over 15 different Incoterms. Who's responsible for insurance? Who's responsible for packaging? But maybe 15 of those different terms. Let's narrow it down to 3. The most common is FOB. The vast majority is FOB terms. Free on board. Basically, if we break it down, a chart will do this better. But at its core, what it means is your factory is responsible. Free on board, free to you to get it on board the ship. If you could kind of almost think of it that way. So they're gonna make the garlic presses. They're gonna put them in master cartons. It's the factory's responsibility to load it on the truck, load it on the flatbed, whatever, drive it to whatever, maybe a local consolidator, clear Chinese customs or whatever foreign customs, and get it on the boat. They're responsible for getting it that far. You are responsible for everything from that point on. So the actual sea shipping, maybe if you have insurance on, freight insurance on the boat, clearing U.S. customs, all of that's on you. But it's the factory's job just to get it to the boat, and then their ownership, their obligation stops there. That's FOB, and that's by far the most common. So definitely ask the question when you're talking about pricing. By default, they're probably going to be referencing FOB pricing, but definitely make sure you understand that. Where I see a lot of people mess up and they really get burned is they expected DDP. They thought, oh well, they told me it was $8, so that's what I paid. And then 6 weeks goes, there's production's done, and it gets to the port, and they're like, oh wait a second, you mean I have to pay for a customs broker? I have to pay for freight? Right? All of these things come as a surprise. They shouldn't be a surprise, because if you're playing this game, you need to know how to run your business, and that goes back to you have to familiarize yourself with Incoterms. DDP is fine. If I don't want to mess with any logistics end. I just want to write a check and be done. Understand that you're paying a premium, right? Factories want to be factories. They will take care of some of these ancillary activities for you, but they want, right? If they're creating garlic presses out of metal, they've got the skills, the tools for metal machine work, right? That's what they want to be making. They don't want to be coordinating truck deliveries, right? They want to be running their machines. So if you let them do what their core competency is, you're going to get the best pricing, right? If you ask a metal shop to also make something out of wood, they probably will. They won't do great at it, and it will cost you more, right? That's just the reality. If you want something made out of fabric, don't go to someone that also does woodworking, right? It's kind of common sense, but also a lot of new people just think, oh, well, I'm buying from the supplier, they do everything. No, they don't, right? That's not right. You go to an electrician for your electrical work. You go to your roofer for roofing work, right? Yeah. They can do more, but it ends up costing.
Yeah, I mean, you're dealing with a company that's what they specialize in, that's what they do. And like the example you're saying, if they do metal work and then you ask them to do woodwork, odds are they may not even do the work. They're going to outsource it and charge you. So that's kind of what they're doing with the shipping is if you're saying, hey, ship this over for me, they're just going to go to an outside source and you'll pay that probably and a little extra on top for their time. Yep. Exactly. So basically having this knowledge and understanding ahead of time is going to save you money. So now what about, I don't know if you've ever done this. I did, but what about just airing stuff over versus putting it on a ship? Like there's times that, I mean, everybody knows I've made it, very clear. I had an iPhone repair business, right? I shipped iPhone screens over all the time, hundreds and if not close to 1,000 on a box. For us, we had to look at it. Okay, 30 days let's say from the factory to my doorstep is 30 days, approximately 20 to 30 days to get it to me. Well, heck, I throw it on a plane and, as long as it's not a battery or something that's explosive, which you can still do with certain requirements. But point being that I could put 1,000 in a box, have it over and within 3-4 days, and I got it. So sometimes you got to weigh that when it broke down per item, the items were so small that the cost was actually better for me to just air it over, have it immediately, get them up for sale, and start making sales off of them, than wait that 30 days. Because then it's almost like your mindset as far as thinking, when do I need to order my next round of this item and make sure it gets over here? So you got to really, that's what we're talking about today is logistics, right? Logistics is not just the logistics of ordering from the factory and how it gets to you, but knowing, kind of predicting how fast are you going to sell and when do I order my next amount? And did I order the right amount to get me through so many sales that I can order that next round and have it when the next one's ends? So maybe touch on that a little bit. Have you dealt with issues like that where you got to make sure you always got that inventory and those products in stock?
Yeah. Let's even take a small step back and the three main types of shipping. There's sea freight, of course, which sea freight would encompass LCL, less than container load, meaning you just have a pallet or two. Full container load, right? Which could be a full 20-foot container, a 40-foot high cube. Yep. Right. All that falls under sea freight. But then air, right? That we have both air freight or air express. In that continuum of slow and cheap, fast and expensive, right? Then that's kind of the way it goes. Do you want to pay more, but you have it quick, or are you willing to be patient and pay less? It really does go back to your product, right? How big and heavy is the thing? Logically, you think this through. I don't want to say there's no limit, but you can ship very, very heavy things by sea, right? I've never maxed out a container based on weight. It is maybe you could ship lead blocks or something like that in a container. You're never going to have your main limitation is on size, not weight when it comes to sea, just because those containers can hold almost anything. Those boats can hold almost anything. Unlike air, right? With air, an airplane, right? Weight is the biggest limitation, size and weight, because the planes are only so big. But weight is a pretty big limiting factor also, both of which. But so it kind of goes like, are you shipping something that's that's small and light? Is it small and dense and weighs a lot? So just because it's small but it's heavy, so there's keep that in mind, right? Just because it's small doesn't necessarily make it a great candidate for air. If it's small and heavy, again, you're trying to load this on a plane that's got to take off versus a boat that's just going to sit there on the water with almost no weight limitations. So it's something to think about. My experience with air, gosh, I haven't had great. It's almost like for some, my packaging just gets beat up. It gets absolutely. Space is a limitation on planes. That's the reality, right? And every last square inch in that cargo area is going to be utilized. And if that means your stuff just gets jammed in there like a trash compactor, I feel like it looks like some of my stuff was like just driven over by a truck by the time it got to me. So that's been my experience. I will do it when I absolutely have to. If it's do I go out of stock or do I do air? I'll do that if I absolutely need to. But I really prefer sea, just because you can palletize something, they'll shrink wrap it, or even better, if you can do a full container load, then there's nothing else, mixing in with your stuff and banging up your boxes. But man, my packaging gets trashed when I try to do air. Maybe anecdotal, but that's been my experience.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I was just sitting here thinking of a scenario we had one time where we saw that, okay, we need to reorder. We've got, we were cutting it kind of close. We had like 4 weeks before we were going to run out. We had already got the production going. We knew it would probably get there right in time for us to basically run out. And so then we get a little bit closer to it actually shipping, and we're just like, man, we're going to come up a week short. Like, for some reason, sales picked up on it. So we actually had them pull a master carton out and air it to us, and then ship the rest on sea.
Yep.
Just because we didn't want to lose those sales, because you want to keep those sales going, especially that velocity going. So that was one thing that we did. And of course, that's going to depend on the product. Whether you can do that, you got to factor in that cost, that extra cost to get a carton of them over, or a master carton of them over. So, that's one thing that we actually dealt with at one point in a scenario we ran into. So people understand, just to kind of not really back up, but just explain a little more. There's two sides to the shipping. There's the China side of the shipping, or the foreign side of the shipping, then the US side of the shipping. So once it gets out of that China port, why don't you step us through the process when it hits the United States? What's involved in that? How do we get it from the port to FBA? What do I need to do? We've kind of been stepping through this process. So now the ship arrives in port. What do we do next? Or what should we have already pre-prepped ahead of time?
Sure. Yeah. It gets kind of convoluted because there's a lot of things that's like, there's the project of it, and then there's the chronological order. I'll try to keep this simple. Your listeners might need to rewind this a couple of times. So if this is your first time shipping this product, you're doing yourself a favor. Get your barcodes. Maybe you've purchased UPC codes, right? Legit UPC codes, or you've got a GTIN exemption and you're using Amazon FN SKUs, right? So you have to have, at least initially, created the shell of the listing in Seller Central, where I'm going to assume you're using FN SKUs. I think that applies to most private label sellers. So we're going to focus on that. You've gone and set up the listing in Amazon, at least the shell, enough to the point where Amazon has issued you your FN SKU. You've taken that, like, I choose to incorporate that in my packaging, right? Maybe you would just have them put an extra sticker on. Maybe you incorporate that into your product, into graphic design, which is what I do anyways. Either way, you've got get the FN SKUs, get whatever unique identifier that's put on in China. So by the time it's packaged, it's done. That you don't have to like devan that and pay somebody to put a bunch of stickers on. You'll do it once and then you'll learn you'll never do it again. So learn from my mistake. Get that done in China.
So wait, hey, Clint, when you do the inspection,
yep,
can you have them scan some of the barcodes to make sure that it's printed right? Is that something that's included in there, or you can make it part of the process?
Oh, absolutely. The inspection reports I get back, actually, it's kind of funny in that so you'll get pictures of so much different documentation. And I've gotten them before where they're holding my garlic press with a cell phone with a barcode reader on it, right? and like they're actively, and someone else is holding another camera that's taking a picture of the guy scanning the barcode, right, showing that the barcode does actually scan, right? Because a cheap printer, maybe it's a little bit too blurry, it doesn't come out as crisp as necessary.
Yeah.
You gotta know this ahead of time, right?
Yep.
So part of that check is actually when I'm doing that inspection report, I'm getting feedback on, do the FN SKUs scan and do the FBA labels on the master carton scan. Those both need to scan. You can't have those surprises at a loading dock in Amazon. Amazon's got no time for that business, right? So we're checking that out all ahead of time as part of that quality check. So it's a disjointed process, but yeah. So we're gonna set up that listing, get the FN SKU that goes on even before all the packaging is done. So how does the walkthrough process go? We've created the listing from the very beginning. Do yourself a favor and set the site launch date to be like 2025 or something. Set it way out. Don't let it go live, right? You want to, if there's the theory on the honeymoon period, it is what it is. Do yourself a favor, and from that very moment, don't ever let it go live. You're setting it up and you're saying this is going to be for sale in 2025. That's good enough to get the FN SKU. So you've got your widget done. I've worked with a couple of local freight forwarders in the beginning. Just my own uncertainty. I didn't know what I wasn't doing. Flexport wasn't even taking on new clients in the beginning. I think they just wanted people that knew what they were doing, and when I started, I didn't. Right? Worked with a local freight forwarder for a while, and pretty quickly realized I was going to outgrow them. I switched to Flexport, and there's a ton out there. So shop around. Again, I don't get anything for pitching them. It's just been my personal experience. Again, I built myself a little spreadsheet, and I probably talked to 5 or 6 different companies. Like, here's the address it's coming to. Here's the address it's going to. What's my cost, right? But you type that email once and hit send a few times, and you'll pretty quickly work out do they respond quickly? Do they respond professionally? Do they answer your questions? And then make your call, right? Who do you feel comfortable working with?
Did they? So I've dealt with actually importers on record, or agencies to basically bring it in for you. I think one of the things we had to do, and remember, this is a little different scenario. We were bringing it to our warehouse. Yeah. But did they have to? I think we had to get a bond or some sort of like insurance type thing through them, and there's a lot of paperwork involved. So is that the same thing there? You had to deal with a lot of paperwork, and you got to have certain. I don't even know if it's a deposit or just something in place, basically, right? To kind of have them as, hey, they're representing me to bring these in. Is that correct?
Yep. You will need a bond, right? There are basically 2 types of bonds. There's the single entry or the annual. Single entry, just what it sounds like. It's a bond good enough for clearing customs one time. What do you need a bond for? Well, Uncle Sam is always going to get their pound of flesh. That's just the way the world works, right? There are people in the world that would like to play games with HS codes, with tariffs, right? Things like that. And the tax man wants to know that no matter what, if they catch you playing games later, again, they're going to get their pound of flesh. That's what the bond is for, right? So they're gonna get paid because the tax man always gets paid, and it's just to make sure that they get their pound of flesh from you. So there's the single entry, which is a one-time fee. You're buying a bond for the one single entry. Your other choice is an annual bond. That's good for unlimited entries into any port in the country. It's your choice what you want to purchase there. Price ranges. I haven't bought a single entry in a long time. It's a few $100s for an annual. You buy it and then you're good to go. So whoever your freight forwarder is, they should be kind of. You can buy a bond, an annual entry bond separately, just like you could buy an insurance policy from anybody. I've always bought my bonds from who my freight forwarder is. That they're going to sell them to you too, right? It's kind of an add-on service. So inevitably, my annual bond comes up, and I'll get a note. Hey, Clint, by the way, you got 2 months left on your bond. Do you want to re-up it now, or do you just want to have us tack it on to your next shipment? Just tack it on to my next shipment. That's fine. Thanks for the heads up. I've got this extra expense coming.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about HS codes and let's see if I get it right. It's not really invoice that comes in, but they basically need to know. And so people that are listening, if you're not familiar with HS code, Google it. HS import codes. Now, don't let the factory talk you into some different HS codes. Make sure that HS code is the valid HS code that is of the product you're bringing in. Now, each item that comes in falls under a category, and each one will have a code. So you've got to have that correct HS code. Also, be aware, and this does happen, and people sometimes fall into this pitfall, is that the factory will say, oh, we can underprice it. Don't have them underprice it. Make sure it's at the price that you paid for it and not some underprice, because right now we're dealing with this pretty large tariff as we're talking. There's some pretty big tariffs going on in the United States, bringing stuff in from China specifically. And there's going to be, ways that they're going to try to tell you, hey, we could save you money. Now, if the factory wants to give you kickback or something on the back end, that's fine. Make sure your paperwork is on perfectly in check, because it will get checked. They will come back to you and double check you on the HS codes, how much you paid per item. So don't manipulate those numbers or those HS codes, because you're just looking at bigger issues, especially if you're starting to bring a lot of stuff in. Just eat it and move on. So again, look up the HS codes. Clint was just talking about that. So not to get too deep into it, but you've got somebody who brings it in. Pretty much at that point, does Amazon just pick it up, take it to their warehouses? You've pre-scheduled it with them ahead of time. Maybe talk a little more about what's the last kind of step on this.
Sure. So this gets into the clearing of U.S. Customs. Also, there's also the BOL, right? The bill of lading, and how that gets released. So we've got the goods right. We're on the ocean. Assuming we're doing FOB, we've paid the 30%. We still owe the factory 70%. So they will have, the factory has dropped it off at a port somewhere, and right. So it's out of their hands. Basically, at that point they can't recall it. They've dropped it off. They've got what's called a BOL, a bill of lading. Mm-hmm. That's kind of an independent party saying, yes, this factory did drop off this many pallets weighing this much. Here's what they dropped off. That's kind of our little feel-good piece of paper that, okay, they did actually ship it. Well, I mean, they dropped it off, right? You can't go to the port and take it back at this point. So what happens here is freight is such an old school industry. Really, the way technically what happened, even a matter of a few years ago, is that bill of lading has to get here to the United States for us to be able to claim our goods at the port here in usually Long Beach, right, or Oakland, whatever port it happens to be coming into. So what we do is the factory will send you a copy of the bill of lading, not the original. Again, this is the really old school fax machine, right, like type era. They're going to send you a copy of the bill of lading saying, look, we did actually do this. I will go ahead and pay off the 70%. Thank you very much for the copy. Copy's not good enough. Then they will communicate with the freight forwarder, giving the freight forwarder the original bill of lading, right? That's got the official signatures and stamps on it. So your freight forwarder is able to claim the goods once they actually clear customs here in the U.S. It's a really old school system. The other variation of that is a telex release. Have you ever dealt with the telex release?
Yeah, I don't think I did one personally, but okay. I think one of the people in our office had done one. Little more modern in that. Same thing. They'll give you a copy of the bill of lading saying, look, Clint, I did drop off your garlic presses. Right, they're on their way to you. I will pay the 70%, and then they will do what's called a telex release. It's the fax version of it's still super old school. But it's a little bit faster than actually air express mailing a physical piece of paper from one port to the other so that you can actually claim your goods. Maybe there's a $35 fee for that your forwarder might charge. It is what it is. But so we have to take ownership of our goods first. So it's that we've gone through that BOL process or done a telex release so that the goods become ours when they clear customs here in probably the port in Long Beach. From that point, you've got a couple of choices. You can either I'll go inside of Seller Central. You'll set up your inbound shipment, and that you can either do like a UPS, right, small parcel delivery, or LTL.
meaning like it's palletized and it's going by truck. What's the best? I don't know. What are you shipping? It's the best is what fits your needs. So what I would encourage our listeners to do is do both. Amazon doesn't like us gaming the system and setting up a whole bunch of inbound shipments and then picking our favorite. So I would caution you, don't do that. But I don't see anything wrong with set up an LTL and then set up a UPS inbound shipment and see what the costs are. And you can decide for yourself what fits your needs, right? How long is it going to take to get there and how much are you willing to pay? So it depends. If you're just shipping one box, UPS definitely, right? Otherwise, LTL is something like max of 78 inches high, 1,500 pounds per pallet. So if you're moving pallets, then LTL is probably going to be cheaper, although a little bit slower. So, but price both. It doesn't cost anything to work up a quote, right? Yeah. You just type in the dimensions and Amazon tells you here's what it's going to cost you. So go ahead and then you're making you're making data-driven decisions, right? You know it's going to cost you.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So we covered a lot. We pretty much went A to Z from factory to FBA, and that's a lot of information. People are going to need to definitely rewind this a couple times and listen to it a couple more times. Clint, great having you on. I really appreciate your time on this, and we probably could go a lot longer, but we're going to go ahead and cut it right here. Because I had the pleasure, just to back up, I had the pleasure of talking to Clint at a meetup up in Seattle probably 6 or 8 months ago. And it was a lot of fun. And that's actually what sparked getting him on the podcast here to talk about logistics, because exactly what he just talked about. He knows it. He's lived it. He's breathed it. The whole works. Clint's available on all social media. If you want to try to send him a question, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer it for you, do the best he can. Clint, thanks for being on. This is Rob with the Ecom Wiz podcast. Have a good one, Clint. Appreciate it.
Great chatting with you.
All right. Take care.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and for more information, please visit feedbackwiz.com.